Thanks again for joining me for another quick video today on what is a really important topic I know you want to talk about. But before we get into it, would you mind giving me a quick introduction to yourself and to Southern and Northern Monitoring?
Yeah, hi Alex, thanks. So my name's Stephen Lord. I'm the General Manager of Southern and Northern Monitoring. Been in business for just over 2 years and in the industry for about 8 years.
Excellent. So we're talking about alarm handling today, which is obviously a really important topic for a monitoring centre and service provider. Specifically talking, you can split that into two real categories, can't you? Alarm monitoring and video verification, which are really two different parts of a big thing. But to go back to the basics and the foundations of alarm handling, which is a lot of what you do, can you just explain a bit more about that?
Sure. So the main thing that we're trying to do is to make sure that we've got availability to handle all alarms that come into us, and that those alarms are triaged properly so they get the right level of attention. And we can handle a whole range of alarms, anything from a relatively minor one like a low battery alarm, for example, that might pop up at any time, all the way through to kidnapping helplines or to panic alarms and fire alarms, which obviously need the highest level of attention. So a lot of what we do is making sure that we're planning, we've got the technology, we've got the right level of people in place to handle those alarms in the appropriate fashion and do that prioritization.
So that's interesting. You mentioned not just an alarm going off per se if an intruder came in, so kidnapping or breaking and entering, I'm thinking of, but actually even if a part of the security system is dysfunctional, for example, a battery going down.
Yeah, we can get a trouble alarm, we can get a battery alarm, and that's been one thing that we've really focused on over the last few months, where we've been investing in technology to help us deal with those better. We've kind of got a two-stage prioritization process. The first stage of that is using our alarm handling software, which automatically color codes and prioritizes each alarm as it comes in, so the operators can visually see, the ones at the top of the buffer are the most important, the ones lower down are lower priority. So the software does a little bit of that work for us. But then when it comes to actually presenting those alarms to an operator and being actioned, what we want to do is make sure that our operators are really focused on those high priority ones, because they could be a real risk to life or property. So one of our investments over the last year or so has been using our electronic virtual operator to handle some of those lower priority calls, meaning there's a quicker service going out there and it's not going to an operator when it doesn't need to, so they can focus on the important things.
So there's a heavy reliance on advanced technology for what you do. It's not just a case of having operators working around the clock to answer calls.
That's right, and of course we always have operators there at all times, but what we tried to do is make sure that where there's one of those lower priority alarms, it's going through the electronic operator first. And the beauty of that is that it can pick up the calls with a high capacity, it doesn't have time off sick, it doesn't get COVID, and all those kind of things. But we're very conscious that it has to be a customer friendly approach to doing things. And if you're getting a call from a monitoring centre, you want to know what's going on, you want to know what the problem is and what you can do about it. So what we've made sure is that we spent quite a lot of time refining those messages, so that when you get the call, you understand what it is. You get a different system if it's going to voicemail, for example, so it's tailored, it knows it's talking to a voicemail rather than to a person. And also there's always the option to press a button on your keypad to get through just to ask more questions and to find out more, because sometimes we find people, even with a relatively minor alarm, they're stressed out by it, they don't know what to do, the panel's making noises at them in the middle of the night, and then they need some help. So we've always got the option of talking to an operator if you need one, but where it's a routine alarm that can be easily handled by the electronic operator, then we use that where we can do.
It's really interesting you mentioned that, because I'm thinking of two scenarios in my head. One as a residential customer, for example, like you say, probably no security knowledge, probably don't know what to do when an alarm goes off, especially if it, like you say, it could actually be a functional error rather than, or a false alarm rather than someone actually breaking in. How is this benefiting residential customers first and foremost?
I think the main benefit is you get a quicker response all across the board when you need one. So because the machine can take away some of those alarms, it creates more capacity for the operators. So when there is a confirmed alarm, when it is a high likelihood that there's actually a genuine event happening, the operators are available more quickly. Yeah, quite open with everybody, we've suffered through staff shortages like everybody else has over the last year or so. So being able to protect that operator time for the high priority emergency stuff is really valuable. But equally, when it's a lower priority alarm and when you get the electronic operator calling you, you want a really clear, crispy, enunciated detail of what's going on. So you can then kind of be reassured that you don't need to worry about it because it's a power fail or a battery that's a bit low or something like that.
And for businesses, one thing I definitely have first-hand experience of is alarms going off at 2, 3 in the morning when I'm at home in bed, obviously. But I've been the key holder, so I've had to go and respond because my company didn't have mobile security or indeed 24/7 monitoring applied. How is this? How your? I think it's safe to say it's a combination of technology and services. How is that helping business customers as well?
So it's really helping in two ways. The first way is that often we can't get hold of the first key holder because it's the middle of the night and they're not always kind of got their phones by them. So the machine will kind of work through calling the key holder list faster than a person would do. So that if you're not available, pick up the call, number 2, 3, 4, 5 on the list can also pick it up. But also where we've got customers who do employ a key holding service, which is quite popular out there, we have got direct dial numbers into those key holding services. So rather than one of our people ringing up one of their people, waiting for those calls to connect, we say the details to them, they write it down, they type it into their machines and off they go. We use our electronic virtual operator to get that message across to them on a direct line dedicated to handling our calls. And the whole process is quicker. And the idea is if it's quick and it's reliable, then we're more likely to be able to get a response out there in time to find out what's going on and get the situation resolved safely.
Yeah, that makes great sense. So if I was a security installer and I wanted to obviously impart this wisdom with my customers and ensure them that this is the best way to protect their homes and their businesses, what are the real takeaways that you would want to take to them in that kind of situation?
I think a lot of people don't really understand, particularly end users, what professional monitoring gives them. And I think electronic alarm handling is an example of the kind of technology that's been coming into the industry. So people will be looking at, well, can I just monitor this myself on my phone? To which we will always kind of say, well, you can try, but actually that's not the same as professional monitoring, which gives you fully trained, qualified staff to handle your situation. It gives you class-leading infrastructure to deal with situations that happen. It gives you a rapid escalation path. And all of those, the electronic virtual operator is just one of those pieces of the jigsaw to make sure that when we get an alarm come through, it's actioned fast, so you don't have to worry about it.
Understood. Well, Stephen, thank you very much for your time today. Talking about alarm handling, I look forward to catching up with you again soon.
Great, thank you. Okay, we're recording again.
No worries. Hi, Stephen. Thanks again for catching up with me today for another quick video. Today we're talking about a kind of a second part to alarm handling, I suppose, which is all around CCTV and video verification. But before we get into it, could you please give a quick introduction to yourself and to Southern and Northern Monitoring?
Yeah, thanks, Alex. Hi, so my name's Stephen Lord. I'm the General Manager of Southern and Northern Monitoring. I've been with the business for just over 2 years and in the industry for around 8.
Excellent. So, as I mentioned, we recently spoke about alarm handling, which is obviously a massive part of what security monitoring is, especially in the professional capacity. A key part of that's really a part of a growing industry as well, I think, or a key part of our industry is CCTV and CCTV monitoring. To give a bit of background to our viewers, could you sort of provide the foundation knowledge on what is CCTV monitoring first and foremost, and actually, how does it work?
Yeah, sure. So it's fundamentally different from intruder or fire monitoring because typically when we get an intruder or a fire alarm, we know what it is. There's a tag on the alarm when it comes through to us that says there's a fire alarm in zone 4 or there's an intruder alarm on sensor 8, that kind of thing. So we know where we started. Whereas with a CCTV alarm, when it comes in, all we're really getting is a clip saying there's been some movement here. And that is effectively emailed across to us via the on-site video system. We get that, and then it's up to us to action it. So we don't know what we're getting when we get it. And that's what makes it fundamentally more difficult to manage than intruder or fire.
Okay, and is this something that you see as more of a residential or a business function, or actually is it good for both?
It's good for both. We see more on business because often the price tends to make it not ideal in a residential circumstance. But what we have seen recently is people moving away from maybe full-on CCTV to using visual verification linked to an intruder panel, and that's much more cost-effective and fits better into the residential market. But in terms of the alarms that we get, we get them from residential and business equally.
And if I was, again, a residential or a business customer, and I was to say to a security installer or someone like yourself, I'm sure you've heard it lots of times, can't I just monitor my CCTV on my smartphone? Because obviously this is a massively widely adopted function now. What would you say the key differences are?
Yeah, I think the key difference is typically when you're getting a notification to your phone, firstly, it's crowded out by all of the notifications and messages coming through, and notifications have gone crazy on phones over the last few years. But also what you don't get when you're trying to do it yourself is that escalation path and what to do about it. So if we've got a URN, for example, we can call the police out when we're seeing things happening, we can call key holders out, and even on the most basic of visual verification systems, we can we can use the linked intruder alarm and look at the cameras at the time that an alarm comes through to see what's going on, build up a picture, and we can use that as a confirmation signal on one of the more basic systems. So really what you're getting for your money is the expertise and the escalation path that you can't provide yourself.
And is CCTV monitoring or video verification also used in the same way as the technology behind alarm monitoring, when we talked about false alarms, which is a pretty common thing for any security system, whether it's residential or business? Does CCTV monitoring and video verification work in a similar way in that respect as well?
A similar principle in that we have to take the alarm, triage them, act on them. But the extra element that you get with CCTV is CCTV generates far more false alarms than an intruder or fire system ever would. And that's really because cameras on site and NVRs, they're trained to detect, or they're programmed to detect movement. And often they're not much more sophisticated than that. So something like clouds skimming across the sky, or a bush waving around, or a flagpole, something like that, all triggers movement. And often what we find is that each individual little clip of movement can be sent through to us for analysis. And what we don't want is every single one of those going to our operators and tying up their time, particularly on a day when you get get a windy day, you get bushes blown around, you get rubbish flying around, that kind of thing. All sorts of things like that can trigger CCTV alarms.
But obviously the operators are still there to respond when a clip does make it through, I suppose you'd call it a filtration or advanced system. That is the technology piece, basically.
Exactly. So what we want to do is make sure that where analysis can be done before it goes to an operator, that's the way that we can add some value here. So probably for about the last 18 months or so, we've been working with our analytics partner, and each clip that comes in gets sent across to them for analysis in a really quick process. And then if there's some genuine movement seen, a sort of moving person or a moving vehicle, there's a green box put around it. It's presented to the operator with basically, look here, this is where something's happening. And that's really useful, because if you're an operator who's been doing that for hours on end, looking at a lot of images, you need that helping hand sometimes to show you. And particularly camera images aren't always good, lighting isn't always good. So if you're looking at a dark moving figure in dark clothing in a dark environment, it's really hard to see. So that green box can be all of the help they need sometimes to see what's going on. And then the flip side of that is, if it is a pigeon or a bush or something that we really don't need to be alerting anybody to, then the system will automatically flag that as unverified. It's not movement you need to see, and will park it and not present it to an operator. So as you say, it's a filtration system, it's an analysis system to make sure that as much as possible, the operators are overseeing what they need to see and can actually do something about it.
And I'm guessing, just like alarm monitoring, it just speeds up that process of confirmation and indeed response if it requires a response.
Exactly. What we don't want is the operator's time tied up looking at another moving tree, that kind of thing, because that could be the time at which there's a fire alarm coming through, or a panic alarm, or a genuine robbery happening, or something like that. So it's all about protecting the capacity of the operators, but at the same time making sure that we use that capacity to generate quicker responses, and the machine can handle the things that don't need to be seen by a person, because there's no way a person can ever add any value on those clips.
That makes total sense. And if I was a security installer, and I did want, had clients that wanted to connect both alarms and CCTV systems to 24/7 professional monitoring, would you say it's more of a recommendation to have both, or actually a requirement to have both?
It's a good question. So I think in terms of, I would always describe it as you need tailored protection based on what the issues that you're trying to protect against at your site. In a relatively low risk residential area, you might be sufficient having an intruder alarm with visual verification. You might not need full on CCTV coverage, but we do see a lot of sites out there where they might have 10, 15, 20 cameras covering a big site. And the more open the area is, the less suitable it is to link it to an intruder system. So really, it should be tailored according to the particular site's circumstances. But from an installer's perspective, we look after so much that we've seen all the combinations of it. So we're well suited to help and to advise on how to set these things up, where to put schedules onto the account so that we're not seeing alarms during certain times of the day when there's staff on site, for example. So because we've got such a wealth of experience, we're well placed to advise on those individual situations.
Excellent. That's good to know. Stephen, thank you so much for your time today. I look forward to catching up with you again soon.
Thanks so much.